it's not a known fact that as part of the government's efforts to ensure that our developments are taken properly to the people of Niger Delta, the Niger Delta Development Commission was established some time ago in Nigeria. And since then, so many leaders have come on board and development has been given to the people. But today we have with us one of the representatives of the governing board of the Niger Delta, precisely from Delta State, Dr. Ogaga Ifewodo. And he will be talking to us briefly about what the board and in fact the entire commission have been doing to ensure that they make serious, genuine and positive impact in affecting the lives of Nigerians in that region. You're welcome on board, sir.
Thank you very much.
Well, you've been there for a while now. Maybe Nigerians still want to be abreast about what the Niger Delta is actually up and about.
The Niger Delta Development Commission was set up in response to the agitations of stakeholders, member communities of the Niger Delta who complained loudly and justifiably that almost all the wealth, oil and gas wealth of Nigeria comes from there, but not much is put back there. Originally it was UMPADEC, the Oil Mineral Producing Area Development Commission, so NDDC succeeds it. And the mandate of the NDDC is very broad. So broad, in fact, every time I look at it, I am amazed. It's almost like a regional government that can do far more than any of the individual state governments in the Niger Delta. But broadly, it is for the developing physical infrastructure and carrying out ecological remediation. You know, there's been a lot of pollution, environmental devastation caused by oil exploration and gas exploration in the Niger Delta. So ecological remediation, currently the cleanup of Ogoni land, you know, which is a collaboration between the federal government and the UN agency and civil society organization is going on. And then lastly, for human capital development. The principal area in which this happens, of course, will be skills acquisition, training of people, women and youth, and then also scholarships, postgraduate scholarships for deserving members of the Niger Delta who go through interviews and having secured admissions abroad, funded, you know, to undertake postgraduate studies in certain selected areas, especially in STEM, science, technology, engineering, and math. But we recently included law, management, and environmental engineering. So it is a broad mandate, and we hope that with adequate funding and enough political will by any government in power, because this ought not to respect party ideologies or anything, because we're talking about a whole region of the country. With enough commitment by any government in power, the NDDC will be able to live up to this mandate.
You've been there for 2 years.
Yes.
Okay, that means from 2016.
Yes.
Okay, let's backtrack to these very 2 years that you have been there. How well would you say it has been for Nigerians who you are supposed to take care of their interests in Nigeria?
I think, generally speaking, we will have to take a longer perspective, because 2 years, you admit, is not enough. Especially we came in at the worst of all moments. 2016, you remember, Nigeria had just entered the recession. Oil prices had crashed to the lowest in recent memory. So it meant that the funding that NDDC got, principally from the international oil companies, had drastically fallen too. And we can't do anything without a robust budget. Even in the best of times, the NDDC budget, the annual budget, is about 250 billion naira. Now, to the average Nigerian, that sounds like an inexhaustible fortune.
Yes, what are the budget of some states?
Yes, you know, but in terms of the actual work that needs to be done, it is a drop in the Atlantic coast of the Niger Delta. It is really a drop. Take, for instance, to build a coastal railway, cost across the entire Niger Delta, how much would that cost? See how long it's taking the federal government to build the East-West Road, which should be a primary road artery that connects all the Niger Delta states. So it is a massive, capital-intensive project developing the Niger Delta, most particularly because of the difficult terrain one of the first things I did when I was appointed was to inspect projects, some of the, what we call the mega projects. And mega projects in NDDC are projects that are above ₦1 billion. Now, one of those is the Tuomo Barigolo, highway. For about 11 kilometers, you literally put in a road on water, on swamp. And you have swamp buggies digging up clay and building banks on the other side and pouring in tons upon tons of sand. Before they will wait for that to settle down and then fill and fill before you can even talk about stone basing and, pouring asphalt and so on. So it is massively costly to develop the Niger Delta simply because of the terrain. The cost of building a kilometer of road in a drier, more elevated terrain more than triples when it comes to the Niger Delta. And that's just a tip of the iceberg. So it sounds like an inexhaustible fund for any, in the eyes of any average Nigerian. But in terms of what NDDC needs to do to achieve the aim of a regional economy that is functional, that can lead to stability, it is really a drop in the ocean. However, a lot more can be done even with that, I have to admit, and I would say that the Niger Delta is probably achieving about 30% of what it can do based on the constraints that it faces at the moment, some of which have got to do with bureaucratic bottlenecks. A lot of those steps have been put in place to fight what we all know in Nigeria as corruption. So compliance with Bureau of Public Procurement procedures and so on can tend to slow down NDDC when we are dealing with a project profile of about 10,000 projects. How do you, every year, comply with BPP procedures and still be on target so that you don't roll over projects to the next year, so that you can pay contractors on time, so that they can then complete those projects, that when you start another budget cycle, you have a clean slate, or at least only those projects that are like medium term, what we call 3 to 5 years. So it's a whole lot of things I can talk about, but I would say in general, NDDC is doing its best to impact positively on the lives of stakeholders and member communities in the Niger Delta. But we can still do a lot more.
Yeah, we'll still emphasize on what impact you have really made. But I just want to quickly clear a little thing here. You spoke about the budget cycle. We know that has been a very major constraint in implementation of most of the budget of both the federal and state government. Particularly, we look at what the procurement process in Nigeria. There seems not to be in good harmony. Do you think there should be something that will be done to harmonize both the procurement process and the budget cycle in the country?
Most certainly. I believe, although this is not stating the position of the board, I know that informally we are almost all agreed on this. I believe that a special procedure needs to be created for NDDC.
So that money is not moved back to church at every time?
Yeah, not even just that, so that we can conceive of projects and execute them timeously, without all the constraints. BBP is dealing with the whole country. It is a country of 36 states and nearly 200 million people. So it is a lot for it to handle. And then you look at NDDC that has, as we are speaking now, like I said, about 10,000 projects. Every year we have over 1,000. How are you going to satisfy the procurement procedure with all of this, even at just the level of what you call no objection certificate for projects that are below 250 million naira. Now, projects that are below 250 million naira, which will ordinarily have no objection certificates from BPP, we still have to go to them, and we still have to ascertain that these are projects for which they can issue no objection. Now, imagine the amount of bureaucracy that goes with that. Before we talk about projects that are above 250, which even for approval, just approval alone, you will have to go to the Ministerial Tenders Board. And if it's over $1 billion, you have to go to the Federal Executive Council. How many times does the Federal Executive Council meet? And when they meet, how much time do they have to go through all of this? So a special procedure needs to be enacted for a special category commission, because NDDC is actually a special category commission. It's not just like any of these so-called grade A, category A, commission. It's a special category. So for that reason, it deserves a special, procurement procedure that makes it more flexible, have it more nimble, able to execute timelessly on projects and deliver on projects.
Okay, the board of the NDDC as a commission generally was set up because they needed to assuage the agitations of the pains and maybe take away the agitation of the people of Niger Delta. Would you say that this has actually been achieved?
I would say to a large extent. We will agree, first of all, that the agitations in the Niger Delta that had almost paralyzed oil exploration, that's at the level of just the economy of the country, before we talk about insecurity in the Niger Delta, has largely died down. Now, I know that all of it is not attributable to what NDDC has done. A lot of it is also political, like leaders of the region going to the federal government, presenting, about the PANDEF, 16-point demand, and then also people appealing, to the militants, all the time. You know about all of that. But basically, I think it is because they see the NDDC making some interventions at whatever level, if it is school renovations, like renovating blocks of classrooms. I can tell you that now because as we speak in my state and across the Niger Delta, school renovation is going on. I'm telling you about schools where pupils were sitting on the bare floor. Tell you about schools where when it rains directly on the pupils. Tell you about schools without blackboards, without basically the most basic things you need for a school. So now we do this, we can't cover the whole grounds, we can't reach every nook and cranny, but for those schools that we do, it gives hope to those who are yet to have their turn, that it will come to them. Then we furnish them with furniture. I can even, as we speak, we're delivering furniture to a number of schools, and this is an ongoing thing. Then you talk about the small projects, what we call the quick impact projects, which have got to do with road construction, bridges, health centers, and so on, almost always below 250 million naira. Some of those 1.5, 2.5 kilometer roads are actually the closest that a number of communities will come to government. When you link a community that before now had to either use canoes, to paddle to where they can then, take road transport, and you link them by road or a bridge or even landing jetties, that has more impact on them than even a cross or a trans Niger Delta railway that they might build, which some of those fishermen and farmers in the creeks and in the hinterland will never even use. Then you talk about how you can evacuate produce from the creeks in terms of fish, and then food products like plantains, yams, cassava from the farmlands to the cities, to the towns, to the markets. So some of these small ticket projects or road construction that link communities, whether intra-community or inter-community, are also very important, and they impact directly on the lives of the people. And I think that goes a long way in accounting for the relative stability. I would say, I would qualify the word relative stability that we have in the Niger Delta. It's still a delicate stability, but I think for now it subsists, which is why our oil production and gas production is at the level where it is now, far above where it was a few years back.
Yeah, one of the major challenges people have always attributed to the performances of Niger Delta Commission is the political will, which they say some of the past leadership have demonstrated. How much of that strong political will would you say this government has demonstrated in trying to ensure that the mandate is met?
A lot of it. In fact, you will recall that in President Buhari's inaugural speech, he singled out the Niger Delta specifically. As a Niger Deltan, I was waiting to hear what he would say about that, and I was happy. When he not only singled it, he didn't just mention it in passing. It was very specific as to what he wanted. And then our chairman, Senator Victor Udoma Egba, former majority leader of the Senate, who is angling to go back to the Senate now, and I think he will get back, has always reminded us that in his first conversation with the president, he told him that say, I don't have a lot of things to tell you, only go and make friends in the Niger Delta. Now, he's not a man that is given to a lot of many words. But when he says, go and make friends, to me, as a writer and a poet, I actually prefer that to any verbosity that will go about waxing on a usual political sense. How do you, friends, make friends. These are lasting relationships. It means do what the Niger Delta, NDDC is supposed to do. Deliver on the mandate. And when you deliver on the mandate, you will make friends. And when you make friends, that's lasting relationships. And I was impressed by that. The trouble we have, of course, is that there's too much politics in everything in Nigeria. The best intentions are too often subverted by politics. Everything that is done, even in good faith, is read through the lens of politics. But that aside, I think this government is very committed. Of course, you know that he sent the vice president to tour the Niger Delta, all the states of the Niger Delta, and hear from them firsthand and report to him what the needs are. Now, of course, in terms of agitations, our demands always exceed what government can at any point in time do. It's natural everywhere. It's not only here. Everywhere, it's a time, honored, how shall I say, situation. But by and large, in terms of political will, this government is usually committed to transforming the Niger Delta, making friends in the Niger Delta, and ensuring that there's peace and stability there. I can testify to that, myself. Now, the question is it delivering on that? It boils down to the question of available resources. Because at the end of the day, if you have all the grand plans, and I could recite, there are 5 of them, for instance, we have 5 major programs that this board has designed on the broader, what I call, regional transformation, level, rather than just what I be calling the quick impact projects that affect the people directly at the grassroots, but the ones that can contribute to creating a regional economy. We have 5 of them that are focused, but those require huge capital, far beyond what our annual budget will allow, far beyond what the federal government's 65 to 70 billion naira contribution to the Niger Delta budget can do. So what we are looking for now are partners, especially international partners, who will go into these kind of ambitious programs with us to help transform the economy of the Niger Delta, make it create jobs. Because when we talk about insecurity, people tend to forget that the primary reason for it is economic insecurity. Economic security, which is either underemployment or non-employment. So the youths are idle, and as the saying goes, the devil finds work. So finds work for those idle hands. And so these things are in the area, for instance, of starting with review of the Niger Delta, master plan. The Niger Delta Development Commission was set up in the year 2000. In the space of the time between then and now, massive technological development has taken place. The way the world runs has changed significantly. So we need to bring the master plan up to date so that it takes into consideration these transformations. Now, I can name 2 quickly. IT, information technology, and how it impacts every other thing that we do. And then 2, the entertainment industry. If the entertainment, telecommunications, and if you like, add sports, or broadly cultural, entrepreneurship. We have not sufficiently taken care of this. Now, how do you also connect in a world that is increasingly digital? How do you connect the Niger Delta to the world information super highway? You can say, how do you connect Nigeria in general? But since we are speaking of the Niger Delta particularly, how do you? One of the first things we have done is to enter into discussions with the small island of Principe and Sao Tome that has excess capacity in fiber optics. So we have agreed with them to link the Niger Delta through an undersea cable to their fiber optics. And that excess we will use in the Niger Delta to connect the region to the superhighway. Then there's also the Niger Delta Regional Power Pool that we have thought about. We all know that energy, power, is the bane of Nigeria's industrial development. So how do you deal with that problem? Before we can achieve the overall national sufficiency in generation and distribution, there's something at least we can do in the interim, which is to ensure that we do what we call power pools for areas that are close to certain raw materials, and then you create a captive, power, situation where the industries around there can use that power, even if it's not necessarily available for the whole of the Niger Delta. So we identify certain spots in the Niger Delta for that. That's the regional power pool program. Then there's also the, I mentioned the broadband, then the digital e-learning. I said earlier that we have classrooms where pupils actually sit on the bare floor, where they don't have blackboards, even though blackboards are actually outdated now, but they don't even have them. One school that we had to supply furniture to recently told me that they just simply blacked a certain part of the wall that was still standing to use as a blackboard. This is how primitive. How do we compete with the children of Japan, with the children of Malaysia, with the children of Canada, South Korea, if we cannot even provide blackboards? So this is a huge problem. Are we going to be competitive in the 21st century economy? To do so, we decided that we can't wait. So we want to do what we call e-learning program for all Niger Delta schools, starting with a pilot program that Microsoft, leading a team of IT and accounting and management groups, are going to be doing, which is to transform what we call hard copies of syllabi and learning materials into digital formats that will be in a tablet that will be distributed to all pupils in those pilot project. And it will even go as far as to building a laptop assembly plant in Nigeria so that they can be readily available, which in itself is an income generating and employment generating venture. So that's one other thing, the e-learning program. So when you look at all these 5 regional integration and economic development projects that we have designed, and you put them alongside the smaller, quick impact programs that we will ordinarily do, including programs like skills acquisition and training and scholarship, for postgraduate, deserving for candidates to study abroad. And by the way, we have also said it shouldn't be only abroad, because up to now it's only abroad. We just concluded the 2018 one. We canceled 2017 because there was too much backlog. We were owing too much, so we needed to clear those debts first and then start afresh. Now we've just done the 2018. But going forward, at our last board meeting, we decided that it shouldn't only be abroad. There are some good schools, give and take, all that we know. We complain about education in Nigeria, higher education especially, that there are still some very good schools. So those we should extend it to Nigerian schools, which are cheaper, and therefore we can also cover many more, deserving applicants. So all these are areas in which NDDC is trying to go from the problems of the past towards looking to the future and delivering more meaningfully and convincingly on the mandate.
We've said so much, and would you say the people of the Niger Delta, in view of the much that you have done, they are actually happy with your performance?
Some will be happy. Any community, for instance, where NDDC has carried out projects, will be happy. But how many projects can they carry out in our community? Maybe we provided a water project, for instance, but they still lack schools. They still lack roads. So they cannot be fully happy at any point in time. Like I say, human needs are inexhaustible. So, but there are those who will say, yeah, NDDC did this or did that in their communities. I can bet that if you go to the Niger Delta, there's a program on channels called NDDC Today. Maybe I will urge those Nigerians who don't know what NDDC is doing to tune into that program, NDDC Today on Channel Television. They will see what NDDC is doing. It is never going to be enough to make everybody happy, even in one community, because the needs are inexhaustible. But I would say that by and large, when they take the context in which what is being done, they will say yes. One of the last things we did was a retreat in Uyo with the EU. This is part of our efforts to get international partners to help us deliver better on our mandate. Now, NDDC has over 1,000 water schemes in the Niger Delta. Now, water, sanitation are key areas in terms of even healthy living and preventing diseases that can prove costly in the end, both to the production of those who are ill from preventable diseases and then therefore to the coffers of the country in general. So preventing waterborne diseases and improving the living conditions of the people in Nigeria Delta means providing them with safe drinking water. And then we have all these water schemes, but some of them after a year or two, they break down and then they are abandoned. So the question was, what do we do? And the EU has agreed to help us to revive those schemes, but also to train the locals, people from the beneficiary communities, so that they can manage them. Because what we discovered was that there was a gap on how to manage them. It's not very technical, it's not very expensive, but these are poor communities. And very often, like one example that was given to us, they thought that the scheme had broken down, so they shut it down. What happened? One of the taps, the tap head was leaking. So literally flooding, the premises. Since nobody was trained to know what the real problem was, they simply went and switched it off. But if people had been properly trained, they would have known it's a small problem. You replace the tap head, and the problem is solved. But they went and switched it off. So for years, it's abandoned, and they have the water scheme there. So they then resort to so-called pure water, and then so-called unsafe water, and then of course become more ill. So in the end, they spend more. But if that same community is properly trained and they are willing to commit at least just 5% of the cost of maintenance, we're not talking about the cost of building it, but the cost of maintenance, 5%, which is small. A lot of those oil communities actually get monies from the oil companies. If it is Egypt that is active in that community, or Shell, or Chevron, they get monies. So if they devote just 5%, we'll provide the rest, to maintaining the facility. It will be up and running, and it will contribute significantly to their health. So these are some of the things we're doing, and we thank the EU for joining us in that, and we hope that more international partners will join us in this effort.
Nigeria will continue to support the United Nations in all its efforts, including the attainment of the 2030 Agenda for Sustainable Development. I thank you.
Agenda 2030, showing on this channel. Agenda 2030, leaving no one behind.
Thank you very much, Dr. Ogaga Ifewodo.
It's been a pleasure talking with you.
Yeah, it has been a session with Dr. Ogaga Ifewodo, the Delta State representative in the Niger Delta Commission Governing Board. I want to say a very big thank you for watching, and to come again your way next week. Bye-bye.